Today we are taking our veteran show salute to a whole different level. My cameraman and I have reserved a seat in history. We're taking you into the cockpit of a B17 Flying Fortress. We'll be flying from New Smyrna Beach Airport in Florida to Leesburg International Airport. It's all part of the Wings of Freedom tour. These unforgettable World War II planes are part of the Collins Foundation. For over 20 years, the foundation has recovered and restored many of these true landmark aircraft that built our world aviation history. Every year, these unforgettable warplanes travel coast to coast to over 150 locations across our country. 60 plus years ago, these planes flew from their bases far from home over occupied enemy territory in an attempt to weaken the forces of evil so that freedom could once again return to the people who it was stolen from. Their endurance was tested on missions of 10 or more hours, day after day. Their strength was proven as they returned countless crews safely back to their bases. Crews counted on them, and a bond was made between man and machine. Today, these unforgettable planes fly on missions that are quite different from those so long ago. Their mission is to educate the world about the courageous World War II veterans and to honor the sacrifices made by our veterans that allow us to enjoy our freedom. These aircraft stand as a tribute to the crews and fly on as living history to enlighten future generations about our national history and heritage. Matter of fact, if you really want to experience the grace, the power, and the speed of these World War II aircraft, the tour offers flying experiences where you can actually fly in one of these World War II planes. The B-24, the most massive produced American aircraft in history. Over 18,500 of them were built. It flew in all theaters of the war. This B-24 is the last fully restored Liberator that is still flying in the world today. It flew in the Pacific with the Royal Air Force in bombing missions and resupply missions. Or how about taking a personal flight on the Betty Jane, a P51 Mustang escort fighter? The bomber crews referred to the P51s as their little friends. Pilots who flew these saved countless lives and helped turn the tide of World War II. The P51 is arguably the finest fighter aircraft in the history of aviation. The Betty Jane is a fully dual control, which means you get a chance to fly it.
All right, well, we'll do some seat turns here. That looks good. You're doing a great job. This is just awesome. All right, let's really show you what it can do. We'll go put it through the steps. We'll do some aerobatics.
We're going to experience one of the most legendary bombers of all time, the B-17 Flying Fortress. This flight is going to allow us to be part of the crew and experience what it was like to fly in this legendary bomber. This B-17 was restored to its wartime configuration, with all original turrets and guns. We're going to have to be buckled in for takeoff, but once we're off the ground, we'll be able to get up and walk around and see why they call this the Flying Fortress.
I need to introduce you.
Oh, okay.
My name is Bob Peters. I'm with Salute, the TV show, and we're going to be filming this.
Okay.
And your name is Frank?
Hale.
Hale, Frank Hale. Nice to meet you. You were in the service, I'm assuming?
I was in the service, but not as a pilot.
But you're a pilot now.
I learned to fly when I was 15.
How many pilots do they have with the Collins Foundation to fly these?
Rated pilots, probably about 8. You know, that are actually type rated in the airplane. We probably have another 8 co-pilots. Okay. It's on the road 10 months out of the year, so we need help. You know?
Yeah,
I need pilots.
Well, we're going to crawl inside here when we get the go-ahead here, and and you can explain
Yeah. Okay.
to me what you know. The question I had was I was talking to a young fellow over there about the turret, the gun turret. The tail gunner primarily stays in the tail.
Well, he took off in the waist, and then we have canvas where he can't get through there now, but he actually crawled back past the tail wheel into the back, and there was no seat. It was just kind of a bicycle seat, and he kind of crouched like this. He had a little
Oh
bit
my
for
goodness!
his butt. Yeah. His bailout position, there is an emergency exit, was this door right back here.
So he couldn't have been my size. He never would have got through the door to begin with.
Once he was in there for the mission, he was there until he got ready to land. Now, sometimes those guys spend as much as 14 hours back there.
Wow.
So it's a long time.
And this is primarily a crew of 10.
Crew of 10, correct.
Okay, so we're going to go inside and check it out.
Okay. Watch your head when you come in.
Oh, God, that's how I got to do this?
Now you're in the waist position of the airplane. And we had two 50 caliber machine guns here in the waist, and this is a later model B17. This is a G model, and the waists were staggered. The early models, they were together, and the gunners kept bumping butts, so that was a problem. The early airplanes, the waist windows were open. These are closed, which was much more comfortable, if you want to call it comfortable. Average temperature on a mission was between 50 and 60 below zero.
My goodness.
So they had electric suits that they hooked up, and this is one of the suit heaters here. It's a standard 110 plug volt.
Oh yeah, regular outlet right there.
Unfortunately, they tended to short out, which could cause some interesting feelings in your legs and so forth. This airplane is not pressurized, so you had to have oxygen. And these are the oxygen feeds right here that had oxygen tanks pretty much all over the airplane. We don't have them in here now because it just takes up room. Yeah. But one thing you'll notice is the control cables. They're up here and they're all exposed. And that's by design. The reason being what they plan to do if these were shot through, which happened on a relatively regular basis, they carried splice kits, and they could actually splice the controls back together so you could maintain control of the airplane.
Yeah, they were known for taking a beating.
This airplane could take a real beating. You can tell from the number of longerons and bulkheads in the airplane. It's very strong. The floor you're standing on is wood, and that was actually wood. The ammo feed boxes were wood. These seats.
That's wood. Is that one of the originals?
This is one of the originals, and the reason they were wood is because metal was a strategic material, and wood was not. So it was more available than metal.
Yeah, and of course these seats were not there.
They weren't
this
there.
is something for the rides.
This little green bottle here.
Yes, sir.
That's a walk-around bottle. If somebody had to go back to, let's say, for example, if the tail gunner was injured, one of the waist gunners would have to go back there and take care of him. But you're at between 30 and 35,000 foot. You had to have an oxygen bottle because at that altitude it's about 2 minutes before you lose consciousness. So it was critical to have walk-around bottles in various places so they could actually move around the airplane.
So now we're going to move up towards the nose.
Yeah, this is the ball turret.
Yeah, we took a film underneath.
Yes.
Primarily, evidently this is where they could get in on this side.
Not that one.
No, not that one.
That's the maintenance.
Oh, I should have known better.
What they did is once the airplane was in the air, they would lower the ball turret so the guns were pointing straight down, and that brought the hatch that you see on the back of the ball turret up into this.
Oh,
area.
I see, because it rotates. Yeah, I could see the gear.
Yeah, this had its own hydraulic system to operate. This turret didn't have enough room for the guy to carry his chute down there, so he had to leave his chute up here in the waist. If he had to bail out, he had to get out of the turret, put a chute on, and then go through, either through the door or through a big hole in the airplane, either way. It's not a very big position. You basically have your legs up around your ears, but it was very armored, so it was actually pretty well protected. But I would not want to be there for the length of time that those guys were.
Not me.
These were metal chute feeds here. And this is an example of an oxygen.
I was going to say, isn't this an oxygen
bottle?
bottle?
It's a low pressure oxygen system. This bottle would have fed the ball turret.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought.
And then you come on up.
Okay, so we're moving on up.
Now what you're seeing over here, these are the original radios that they use. This is the radio operator's compartment.
Wow.
Now these are non-functional right now, but they had different stacks. They had trailing antennas they had to put out for proper length to transmit. And they also mounted a gun in this position here. You can see this is open. I've seen many sunglasses, hats, all of these sort of things go out of this hatch. He had the table was here. He had a seat, he had a telegraph key, and a lot of the communication was done by Morse code. These guys had to know Morse code quite well. And this is the bomb bay. We do have some replica fiberglass bombs in here. These are 500-pounders. Typical bomb load is about 6 to 8 500-pound bombs, depending on the length of the mission. The longer the mission, the more gas you had to carry and the less bombs you could carry. You know, at the end of the war, they had airplanes that could carry the entire weight of a B-17, including its bomb load. And they were single-engine airplanes, the Sky Raider being a good example. But, you know, the strategic bombing raids that really did a lot of damage were usually about 1,000 airplanes, each carrying about 6,000 to 8,000 pounds of bombs.
And the Liberator carried quite a bit more.
It carried more. You know, there's always the age-old question about which airplane is better, and I finally found a guy a few years ago that had flown both airplanes on a bombing tour, and I asked him, I said, which one's the better airplane? He said, if you want to go further, faster, and carry more bombs, you go in the B-24. If you want to come home, take the B-17.
Yeah, it had a reputation.
Yes. Now you're on the flight deck compartment. There were 3 crew members up here. You had the pilot, and that's the seat I'm sitting in right now. And then you had the co-pilot, it was over here. And you had a flight engineer, which is where the photographer is, the photo guy is standing right now. He stood up in that top turret and operated the top turret. He was also the flight engineer, so during takeoffs and landings, he stood between the 2 pilots to help monitor the instruments. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff. You got 4 engines, so you have all your engine gauges over here, which include your manifold pressure, your RPM, your oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel pressure, cylinder head temperature. 2 guys just couldn't look at it all, so you had an extra guy to monitor. And then, of course, there's World War II airplanes. They put stuff wherever it would fit. You had radio gear up here, and we've modernized our radios, so we got a little bit better equipment now than they used to. But this is where the action was on the flight deck. Actually, a pretty comfortable position. Now we're going to move forward down through the tunnel here up into the nose compartment. These were not built for creature comforts.
No. Certainly weren't built for a guy like me.
This is the nose compartment. Everybody has to crawl. But you can see we got another oxygen bottle up here. You had 250 caliber machine guns up here in the nose, and usually the navigator would operate what we call the cheek guns, which are right here, and it would depend on where the attack was coming from on which one he would use. The bombardier sat in this seat up here. Oh, okay. And there's your Norden bomb sight.
Those are top secret during World War II.
During World War II. Now he had his own set of instruments up here because he had to calculate wind and speed and so forth to set the bombs on how they were supposed to drop. This up here is a gun sight. That is a gun control, and it controls the chin turret that's sitting right under his seat. Actually, the chin turret's right here.
Wow.
But he was totally exposed. Nothing between him and bullets but that plexiglass.
And that wasn't going to stop him.
Nope. Many bombers came home with that whole nose torn off. In fact, I saw a picture of one that was demolished from here forward, and it still made it home.
Wow.
And the navigator was right here where you're sitting, and he had a table. Now remember, these guys had to wear heavy suits, gloves, oxygen masks, and still work with little fine things like calipers. And the vets are what make this really fun for us guys. Having the vets come through and hearing their stories is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of history.
A lot of history,
yeah.
Yeah. So, and that is the tour of the interior of a B-17.
Well, sir, I thank you very much for the tour.
You're welcome.
And I guess we're getting pretty close, ready to take off.
Probably getting ready for lunch.
Let's get out of here and get ready to go. we're going to take his picture. No?
Wow, what an incredible flight. You couldn't overstate the importance of the crews that flew on these B-17s and the contribution these planes made to our freedom today. By going for a flight, it gave me and my camera crew the whole new appreciation for the sacrifices they made. It's just an amazing experience. There's nothing like flying in a World War II bomber. It makes history come to life. If you'd like to experience being part of the crew, to find out more about the Wings of Freedom Tour, you can contact the Collins Foundation on their website, collinsfoundation.org. We hope you enjoyed this special edition of Salute. Until next time.